Note to self: don't piss off Will Solace. By RadioTransmission. The late morning breeze carried laughter over Camp Half-Blood. Campers were busy talking with friends and siblings they hadn't seen since last summer. Some were busy doing their activities, already excited to start the season. One such camper was eagerly practicing a new archery technique. Except that is what she was attempting to do. Kayla promptly ignored the teen trying to talk to her, instead focusing on the target ahead. The son of Aphrodite wouldn't leave her alone since he spotted her at breakfast. At first, he seemed like a nice guy who was trying to make friends. Caleb, as he introduced himself, explained how he found out that he was a half-blood on his way to school, how he somehow talked to the ugly guy with one eye, Cyclops, and they just turned around and walked away. How a dove then appeared over his head, how a coatman, Seda, brought him to camp. The conversation took a turn when he complimented her hair and seemed confused when she thanked him before trying to excuse herself. After taking a quick shower, grabbing her bow and quiver, and letting her brother know where she would be, she makes her way out to the archery range. She didn't get far into her set before familiar, frosted tips and a cocky smile came to view. This time, he was less subtle. He kept trying to get her to leave the range. He kept complimenting her body, outfits, eyes, and anything he could see. Everything he said was drowning in sickly sweet spoiled honey. Why don't we get out of here? I know a pretty beautiful spot in the woods with gorgeous wildflowers. Leaning on a nearby pillar of the archery pavilion. Again, his words are fool's gold, promising riches, but a keen eye will see their worthlessness. The redhead shot another arrow, not responding to him, hoping that he would take the hint if she ignored him long enough. He didn't. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he grabs her arm, yanking her towards himself. His grip strong enough to leave bruises dug into the young lady's forearm. "Let go!" Kayla screamed. Panicked, she tried to pull herself free, but no matter how hard she struggled, he did not budge. "Oh, calm down. I'm barely holding you. We're just going to have a little bit of fun." Warm hazel turned to stone-cold steel as a wicked grin appeared on the old boy's face. The redhead's blood ran cold. The archery range was empty except for them, and lessons don't start for another hour and a half. The range was in a secluded part of camp, closer to the woods than anything else. She was completely trapped. She doubts anyone will hear her from the mess hall, even if she screams like a banshee. Her eyes landed on the discarded arrows at her feet. In theory, if she managed to snatch one, she could injure him. His grip might loosen just enough for her to get away. Just as she hyped herself up enough to attempt her escape plan, a voice interrupted her with an icy fury that made her freeze in her tracks. The voice was normally bright as sunshine and had a sweetness like caramel, the one who sang her lullabies and kissed her injuries no matter how old she had gotten. She said, "Let go." Will Solace stood a few feet away from the couple. Kayla has never seen her older brother this angry before. He looked ready to kill Caleb. Maybe he was. Behind him stood Will's boyfriend, their other brother, Austin, their father Apollo, and Meg. Apollo's past master turned friend. She had forgotten that their father was visiting today. Everyone wore similar faces of fury and concern. If the situation were any different, Kayla might have marveled at how identical their older brother and father were at that moment. They were not her golden retrievers, but wrathful wolves circling a man who injured their precious pup. The godly power radiating off the both of them was indistinguishable. If she didn't know any better, she would assume that her brother was a god before her. "This doesn't concern you," Caleb all but snarled ignorantly. His grip tightened, ripping a pained cry to escape from her lips. This only seemed to anger the wolves even further. cold, critical rage turned into unmasked fury. How dare this filth touch one of their beloved pups? Apollo only saw red. The stain on the bottom of his shoe dared to hurt his baby. His children have always been dear to him, but after the Second Titan War, and especially after his trials, his children have become the equivalent of priceless jewels. Only 3 lights left in his grip. The rest had fallen from his hands like ashes in the wind. So, for this waste of oxygen to even look at one of his dear beloved children is an insult to his very being. If the heroes of old could come up from the underworld and only speak one piece of advice, it would be, you don't anger the gods. You don't anger him. Even though he has mellowed out quite a bit over the years, one thing he is not is merciful to the unjust. The god took a step to most likely smite this worthless mortal. However, his son, the sun god's pride and joy, positioned himself between his family and the pest, holding their pup hostage. Thick, toxic black smoke started to swirl around Will's legs, slowly starting to rise. Will, Nico, worried for his boyfriend, started to move to meet the blonde. Apollo stopped him with a gentle arm on the young hero's shoulder. The son of Hades' protest faded from his lips when he met the god's gaze. A silent conversation was held with nothing but startling gold and deep obsidian. Trust him. Trust me. A nod was the only response. Nico will trust his partner. He will always trust his lover, and today will not be an exception. He will trust Apollo. The god has proved himself to be trustworthy, and Nico can see the underlying worry behind his carefully created mask of indifference. This was not the god of the sun, the Olympian, but a concerned father trusting that his son could take care of himself. You're hurting my sister. This does concern me. Now, release her, or I will take a page out of my father's book and give you a plague so painful you will beg for death. Will's voice was even, but it was obvious to everyone present the slipping restraint. You're bluffing, Caleb fired back, his grip slack. Kayla took the opportunity to get away. Stumbling a bit, she orbited around to her brother, cradling her bruised arm as she went. Will took one look at her blue and black forearm before turning his sight on the boy in front of him. You want to test that theory? I have no problems with killing you here and now for leaving a mark on my sister. The smoke flared up around the two, protective and deadly. The black mist broke off, creating 3 plumes of silver smoke. Smoke turned into grotesque human-like features, and soon 3 identical silver spirits stood behind the sibling duo. Recognition flashed on the young daughter of Demeter. Is that Nosai? Apollo confirmed. Plague spirits. Is that bad? Austin spoke up, worry creasing his brow. They were super hard to beat. My sword went right through them, Meg helpfully said. Nico grabbed his sword. This couldn't end well, not if those floating corpses touched his boyfriend and his sister. But how did Nosai even get in camp? Apollo made sure that none of them could pass the border, and the god certainly didn't summon them. So who did? Unless... Apollo looked at his oldest son carefully. Plague and disease surrounded his son, but it didn't seem to affect him. Nor did it come from the Nosai. No, it came from Will. Apollo gasped in revelation. It's been a long time since one of his children had dominion over disease, with so much power and control, no less. He doesn't know if he should be proud or concerned. Maybe a little bit of both. Kayla, go to Dad, Will whispered gently to her. She gave a fearful gaze towards the ghouls, not daring to leave her brother's side. Don't worry, they won't touch you. I'll make sure they don't. Will's voice was strong and determined, despite the growing sweat on his brow. She slowly and reluctantly walked towards the group. One of the Nosai made a move towards her, but a single glare from Will made it back away. Finally, in the safety of her father's arms, Kayla allowed herself to relax. She was safe. Her brothers are here. Her father is here. She is in his loving embrace, strong, protective, but gentle, like a warm summer's day. A grunt brought everyone's attention back to the blonde. Will was bent over, shaking. His face was contorted in a weird mixture of determination, fear, concentration, and anger. His control was slipping, Apollo noted. No sooner did he think that Will fell to his knees than Nosai started to become restless, looking like rabid dogs eagerly waiting to be freed from their leash. In a way, they were. The black tar-like smoke circled Will more dangerously. It rose and fell like a ruthless tide of pure death. Apollo can feel it from here. Will made good on his promise. The sickness that threatened to overwhelm him was certainly painful. It was a carefully crafted virus that attacked the lungs, made painful blisters, raging fever, and even could make you blind. It was a slow, painful disease, one that wouldn't have a cure because, although very similar to other diseases, was never seen before. The god quickly sprang into action upon noticing Will's diminishing control. With a quick glare and a wave of his hand, the Nosai vanished into silver, the unnamed illness suffocating, even for him. Apollo cradled his son in gentle hands before looking back over towards the group of worried teenagers. I don't have time to explain, but know that I'm going to take care of him. It might be a while, but he's going to be fine. Nico wasn't going to lie and say he wasn't scared. He felt his sister Bianca die, and now he can feel death surrounding his boyfriend. He gave a shaky nod to the god. He has no choice but to trust Apollo. If anyone were going to help Will, it would be him. Giving what he hoped was a reassuring nod, Apollo teleported them to his temple on Mount Olympus. Getting his bearing, Apollo swiftly made his way through his home. It was perfect, and Apollo is eternally grateful for the foresight to make this request for times such as this. Annabeth Chase is a wonderful woman who, even though some of his requests were a little outlandish, had beautifully designed this room. Apollo is no stranger to experimentation. It was the very foundation of most of his domains. New music could not be written without figuring out the right notes. Medical equipment and techniques could not be used if not for the mistakes of the past. All in all, it was a failure that built his very being. In the times of ancient Greece, he would experiment on new illnesses, mostly in secret, but they were never secret for long. Over time, the plague would escape his temple and settle over Olympus, sometimes even reaching Earth. Nowadays, he doesn't mess with sickness as much. There were too many diseases already, no need to add another. But for whatever reason, when Annabeth redesigned their temple, he requested to make a special room, a room where he could freely make and trap diseases as much as he liked. Finally, in the room, he sealed the door, making sure no disease could escape. With a small gesture, a bed appeared in the corner of the room. Carefully, he laid Will on it, sweat gathering on the boy's brow, and his body was shaking at the mere force of holding in the virus. Shh, almost done, Apollo cooed. The god waves his hand, and a respirator appears. With gentle hands, Apollo secured the mask around his son. Okay, Will, I need you to let go. It's okay, son. We're in my temple. No one's going to get sick, but I need you to let it out so it doesn't affect you. Can you do that for me? Apollo waved his hands through his hair in a hopeful, calming way. Will just looked at him. His eyes were still alight with light, and it took the god an embarrassingly long time to realize what his son wanted. I'll be fine, Will. I'm the god of plagues, my dear. Gods don't get sick by mortal illness, and even the ones that do infect us gods, I have a stronger immunity to them. It would take a lot to get me sick, sunshine. That seemed to ease the younger's worries, because no sooner had Apollo finished, Will relaxed, and the black smoke that was clinging to him finally released its hold. The smoke filled the room, thick and suffocating. Apollo managed to get a hold of an empty bottle from one of the many shelves, and say an incantation in ancient Greek. Slowly, the smoke faded from the room. Sighing in relief, Apollo capped the bottle, making sure that it was secure before setting the now black bottle on the shelf. "You can rest now, Sunshine. You did such a good job protecting your sister. I'm so proud of you, little wolf." Apollo turned towards Will, but his son was already fast asleep. Chuckling, the god gently took the mask off the teenager, doing a quick checkup while he was at it. No sign of the sickness. Slight fever and muscle fatigue, but otherwise healthy. His boy just needs some rest. Speaking of rest, letting his son's shirt just above his belly button, he saw the familiar black fabric. Apollo sat Will up, careful not to wake him. Carefully, he took Will's shirt off, putting it to the side before removing the black binder underneath. It's not good for a son to be binding when resting. Besides, he can see the bruises. Will needs to let his ribs breathe for a second anyway. Setting the binder aside, Apollo tugs the camp shirts back on Will before settling the boy down and tucking him in. He was about to walk away to tell his children and Nico that the blonde was okay before a sneeze stopped him in his tracks. Did Apollo sneeze? And sure enough, after doing a quick scan of his own body, he had a very mild case of Will's disease. Maybe a nap would do me some good. And that's where we leave the story. Will, the sun god Apollo, and his surprisingly strong son, Colin, both were slightly worse for wear, but otherwise content in the safety of each other. Okay, I was like a little bit weird, but I don't read these, so who am I to complain? I don't write fanfics, I cannot complain. But I'm like, okay, I don't really want to say these nicknames, but maybe I should shut up. Maybe I should, okay. Anyway, just a heads up. I don't think this one will be tagged Solangelo, even though there's like a little bit of it. Just a heads up. If I do hit 100, because I'm actually getting pretty close, like 11 away. So if I do hit 100, I'll probably start a Solangelo series and then work on it while I finish Marauders for the month. I don't remember what it was. I just read a chapter like 10 minutes ago. Anyway, yeah, I'll probably start a series, because the original plan was to finish Marauders for the month and then do a Solangelo series. So I'll probably just, once I hit 100, if I do, then start a Solangelo series. I'll probably post like 2 on that day. I don't know, maybe I won't have time, I'll see. And then after I finish Marauders for the month, I'll wait to finish that series first, and then I'll move on to a different Solangelo series, because it was originally in the plan to go for that one. Or a Will one. I don't actually know. But anyway, we'll see. Thanks for listening.